Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Bernie ISD trustee and owner of the Bernie Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Bernie City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. Welcome to Ceasefire. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And we've got a show for you today. It's a one-word title, actually.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of us may not know exactly what it means. It's called nihilism. So what is nihilism?
I don't know. It seems meaningless to me. Why are we even here?
Let's just go veg out and binge watch something for about 16 hours.
Well, I can answer your question. The Oxford Dictionary defines nihilism as the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless.
I looked it up too because I wanted to be sure, because it's one of those words that people use a lot, not necessarily knowing exactly what it means. But it also is a philosophical viewpoint that rejects the existence of inherent meaning or life, like you said, asserting that traditional beliefs and moral values are unfounded. And it encompasses various forms, including existential nihilism, which focuses on the meaninglessness. I've been looking at it too, and one of the things I looked up, and it talked about a political belief. And that is that the political belief or action that advocates or commits violence or terrorism without discernible constructive goals. So purposeless action, which ties into the meaningless, but this definition tied it into a political belief where it sort of gets people to do all kinds of violent stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting.
There's, I think, 4 or 5 different types of nihilism. I read
Different
about
levels.
Political nihilism and existential nihilism, and it just like you start getting off into these little branches, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But the root of it is meaninglessness.
Yes. So let's start there. The idea that life is meaningless. If that is true, and I don't think that it is, but let's just suppose for a moment that life is meaningless, what are the consequences of a meaningless life? And I think that gets in. That's a heavy question, right? I mean,
it is, because that takes away almost everything in our lives as humans.
Right.
Now, there's life that may not have any kind of understanding of belief or morals or anything like that, like a plant. So their philosophy might be a meaningless nihilism. But what makes us different from plants or animals or other forms of life is that we find meaning in life itself. And so if you take away the meaning, then I think you almost take away all of what makes us human.
Right. And I think, one of the dangers is that without meaning, without this belief that there is some purpose to your life, that you'd end up in a constant state of despondency and sadness and just no desire to continue living or doing anything. I think that maybe that's the far-reaching consequences of it. Maybe that's not every nihilist, but I think that's certainly the path that it sets you on.
Yeah. And I will go out on a very long psychoanalysis limb here and say that I do believe that when people become suicidal, one of the things that they're starting to absorb is a nihilistic attitude. And that's why they're willing to go that far, is because they just don't see any meaning anymore.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about meaning and values, where do they come from? I mean, a rock doesn't believe in meaning. A plant doesn't have any values of life per se. Even an animal doesn't really think in terms of meaningfulness of life. As humans, where do we get our meaningfulness?
Well, that's a great question, and I think for many of us, it's the belief in a supreme being. For Christians, God. And I think that takes us to the idea of having law and order and having a sense of purpose and doing things properly, correctly, legally.
So there's a right and a wrong.
Right and a wrong, and absent of God, then there is no right or wrong, and that's chaos.
Yeah.
For many of us, that's how we would interpret that. And I think it's critical, too, to the foundation of our country, because our founding fathers wrote of our inalienable rights, meaning rights that come from God that cannot be taken away by man. if you take God out of the Constitution and say, well, there is no God, well, then it's men that gave you those rights. And if a man can give you your rights, then a man can certainly take those rights away. But if they come from God, they can't be removed. Nobody can take them from you.
I do wonder, though, if it is possible to develop meaningfulness and value without a belief in God. I'm not sure you can, but it seems to me that you might be able to. I'm not sure where I want to go with this, because I do feel a lot of our values and our morals do come from God and the religious growth of humanity. Mm-hmm. When you bring up the inalienable rights, I'm going to go back to something that I thought of years and years ago that separated those from God per se. I equated our inalienable rights to something fundamental in nature. And as an example, my thought was a pack of horses or herd. Is it a pack or a herd? I don't even know.
I think it would probably be a herd.
It's a herd. Okay, sorry.
We're going to get angry phone calls now.
I know. Okay, everybody, you're going to have to bear with me on this. So the herd is the social group and the controlling group of an individual horse's life. An individual horse has a right to life that the herd cannot take away. Now, a wolf can, because that's some outside thing. But if that herd decides that they don't want to provide the life for that one horse, that horse can leave. And they go solo. Happens all the time, right? They switch herds. So in nature, there is a right to life. And by the same token, I think there's a right to liberty, which is the right to leave the herd. And there's also a right to the pursuit of happiness, because the different horses can leave and go pursue someplace else. Although I believe that God has made humans perceive value and morality, but not necessarily animals, I believe that the particular ones that you were bringing up, the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness that our country is founded on, are even deeper than just God presenting good and evil to us. It's part of his creation of nature, that those are even deeper than anything else he's created. So I know that's a distinction that I feel is important, because I think that means that the foundation of our nation applies to everybody, Christians, people of other religions, and people of no religion. They can also believe in our founding principles, because it's based on something even deeper than a religious belief.
Good thoughts.
I got a quote for you.
Okay.
And this is William Shakespeare.
All right.
And this sort of sums up what I think some people believe that have this nihilistic viewpoint. I don't know which play this is from, sorry. But he said, "Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." Basically saying that life is all meaningless and then you go away. And I don't have any idea of what Shakespeare's morals were, but I wouldn't have thought this would come out of him. But I think he was speaking to something that we sometimes feel.
Yeah.
I think we all feel that a little bit sometimes. And I think he speaks to that.
And I think that's a good way to put it. I think we all have that experience at different stages in our life, maybe certainly in our teen years.
Yeah.
When you're going through puberty and you're trying to figure out, oh my gosh, where am I going? What's my purpose? And then maybe again in the twilight of your life, as
what
you're
have
looking
I done?
back, what have I done? Exactly.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned that. I want to give people, if you're still struggling with the idea of what that looks like in modern culture, I want you to think of Ali Sheedy's character in The Breakfast Club, the sort of goth girl. That's your nihilist, the teenage girl rolling her eyes at her mom and, oh my gosh, why am I here? That sort of idea. Maybe that's not every nihilist, but that gives you an idea in modern culture of what one might appear like.
Right. Somebody that embraces the dark side, the meaninglessness of existence and society.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we talked about something earlier that was sort of an extension of this, and we were talking about how teenagers sometimes will embrace this a little bit. And I think there's a gradations to nihilism, because as a teenager, and actually anybody will be insecure about things that they don't understand or can't do. Mm-hmm. And so they'll say, well, that's not important. And that's just a teeny bit of nihilism, but it's sort of a temptation that we do to sort of excuse our lack of knowledge or expertise or something we're just embarrassed about. So somebody says, well, you can't ever spell your words right. Well, spelling's not important, so I don't apply any meaning to spelling.
Right.
Personally, I'm bad with names, but I'm not going to say, well, names aren't really important. But I can see the temptation because it's embarrassing to have a fault.
Right.
And if we can disregard that aspect of ourselves as important, then it's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's a great thought, and something I had considered myself as preparing for the show. I was equating nihilism, especially with young people, as a Linus's security blanket. It's something that he found comfort in.
You hold on to it.
And so there's this thing that you just don't quite understand, especially in those teen years. What the heck am I doing here on this planet? And my gosh, if you drop somebody that had never been there before in the center of Manhattan, and I've had that experience before, and it's like, oh my gosh, you feel so insignificant, right? And so you just start grasping at anything, and when you can't find that meaning, there's that security blanket, and well, it's okay, it's meaningless, it doesn't mean anything, or if you just don't fit in. Maybe it's somebody struggling with sexual identity, right? And so then you can start saying, well, there really is no objective truth, and it's also, gender's subjective, and I don't have to.
It's not important.
I'll be over here in a other category, right?
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to take a quick break here and then come back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We'll see you in a bit. Bernie has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Bernie Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Bernie Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Bernie Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Bernie at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Bernie Bookshop. Welcome back. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and today we are talking about nihilism. And one of the philosophers that really studied a lot was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche. Yeah, okay. I'll never get that right. And
it doesn't matter. It has no meaning.
It doesn't matter, right? Nothing matters. And he studied a lot, and I'm not so sure what he exactly believed about it, but he did a lot of study about it. And one of the things he said was that the surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Now, this is not necessarily about nihilism, but it brings up the fear that a lot of us have and why we end up grasping for the nihilistic side of something and saying it's not important. I thought that was interesting because I do think that we see a lot of groupthink these days and a lot of effort to get people to agree with each other, and we hang out in our own echo chambers all the time. And so we put those people in esteem rather than appreciating people that think differently.
Right.
I thought that was interesting.
He's an interesting character, and I think I've shared this with you before. I think that difficult for me, at least, to hold him up as sort of the grandfather of nihilism, or one of the top nihilists, because I think he studied it a lot. I'm not convinced that he was a proponent of it. I think he did a lot of analysis into it. That's my take, but certainly a controversial figure.
But in order to understand some of these things, you need to have those figures that dig deep into it, and so that you can understand what's going on behind it. I think it was mid-1800s, something like that, after the French Revolution. But I would say that the French Revolution encompassed a lot of nihilistic proto-beliefs, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Basically the belief that we can make up our own values.
Right.
The values established by society are meaningless. They also believed a lot of people's lives were meaningless. So they got rid of them.
So another individual I want to bring up that I wrote a lot about meaninglessness, and that's King Solomon, right? And that, man, when I was younger, reading Ecclesiastes was a chore. I did not like that book. As I've grown older, I've come to like it and enjoy it a bit more. First glance, you read it, and it's like, my gosh, this is depressing. Here's this guy, supposedly the smartest man or the wisest man that ever lived, right? And wealth beyond measure, had all these things given to him. I don't know how many wives, and that seems more like a curse than a blessing, but anyhow, different subject. But had all these things, then he comes to the conclusion that, it was just a chasing of the wind. And younger Ron thought, wow, that really stinks.
Yeah.
Older Ron reads that now, and what I gather from that book is that what he is telling you is that apart from God, everything is meaningless. Apart from that relationship with God.
Right. So he was more prioritizing things.
Yes.
He was saying that the meaning of a relationship with God is so far above anything else that it's not even comparable.
Right.
And then we get caught up with all those little things that don't play any part in the big picture. Yeah.
And I am not a Bible scholar, so I apologize for this, but he talks about, hey, just enjoy your work, eat, drink, have a good time, because that's your lot in life, and I've just simplified it probably too simply, but I like that. That actually brings me a lot of comfort now when I read that. It's just that, hey, you've got your friends, you've got your family, be content.
And find the meaning in those.
Yes. So since I brought them up, I'm going to read a little scripture here, if you'll bear with me. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This, too, I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? So there's why I say, he's directing us to look to God to find the meaning, that anything apart from God, and you're going to end up in that nihilistic state.
Yeah. There's another writer that I have actually not read, but actually sells a lot of books in my store, and so I'm intrigued by him. It's Albert Camus. Have you ever read any of his stuff?
I have not.
I haven't either, but we've sold a lot of his books, and I've always wondered. But I've got two quotes for him, and they're actually pretty neat. So one of his quotes is, "Nihilism is not only despair and negation, but above all the desire to despair and to negate."
Oh.
So it's about a compulsion to push away the values of life and stuff and meaningfulness of anything. And I thought that was interesting. And his other quote is, "A nihilist is not one who believes in nothing, but one who does not believe in what exists."
Oh, that's deep.
So we got a lot of his books. And actually, that's not the book I brought to present today. The book was The Essential Nietzsche, which I have not read. But if you want to explore these concepts, he's done a lot of writing, not necessarily as a proponent, but exploring those ideas.
Yeah.
So we got those at the Bernie Bookshop if you want to learn more about that. One from the side of exploring it. And see, I haven't read any Albert Camus, so I'm not sure if he spends a lot of time fighting against it, as an oppositional thing or not. But
I love that you own this bookstore and you have all of these books at your fingertips, and probably about half the books that you bring in here you have not read. I almost want to grab you by the lapels and what are you waiting for? But I'm embarrassed to say this.
My whole bookstore is my stack of to-read list.
Yeah. I have at home LPs that are still sealed.
No. Really?
Yes, sir.
Does the record exist if you haven't opened it? Does the music exist if you haven't listened to it?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Getting off into another philosophical topic here.
One of the reasons I open the store is because I have so many books I want to read, and I love having them around me, but I just never have the time to read them all, so I don't. And now I read less than I used to, but I've got more of them around me. I don't know. I'm not sure what that says. But.
I don't know. It sounds meaningless to me. It's in one of the books you haven't read.
It's in one of them, yeah. One of Nietzsche's sayings that is kind of depressing. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. So he had a pretty depressing outlook on life, but to your point that he wasn't necessarily a proponent of nihilism, he says surviving is about somehow finding the meaning in your suffering. I mean, I think you can find that in the Bible. You can find that all over the place, is finding the meaning in your suffering. And we all wonder about what does suffering mean?
Yeah.
And why do we have it? And why is there so much of it? And what is the meaning of it? And that's what surviving, according to Nietzsche, that's what surviving life is about, is finding that meaning.
That's interesting. The quote that you read earlier, repeat that again to me, the prior one. There was something
about the believing in what exists.
Yes.
Okay, that's Albert Camus. A nihilist is not one who believes in nothing, which is sort of the traditional definition, but one who does not believe in what exists.
See, that one's
subtle distinction there, but it sort of makes your mind go, whoa, really?
So both of those, I'm trying to think of another example of nihilism today, and I think it's evident in people in the way they interact with their government, sometimes in a state of despair, like, well, what difference does it make anyway? They're going to do whatever they want. Or why should I get involved? Because, they're all getting money under the table, and so there's no reason for me to get involved. And there's that line of security blanket again. It's like, well,
it's not important.
Yeah, it's not important, and I can ignore it. But it's almost like an excuse, too, to not be involved, to not get engaged.
Because it's not important.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about how people seem to focus on the federal level and don't focus on the local level, even though local government is much more impactful on our lives than the federal government.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the dangers of that attitude, is it separates you from not just your government, but from your community, from your neighbors, to be involved and to help out.
Yeah. I would even say that some of the beliefs, just tear it all down.
Yeah.
Adheres to that, because a lot of these people on all parts of the political spectrum, there's groups that want to just tear it all down, and they seem to think that they can build it back the way they think it should be built, but they don't really have a clear vision of what that is.
Right.
And I think that comes from this I don't even want to say nihilism is in human nature, but maybe there is some in human nature that we just want to tear it all down just to tear it all down.
Yeah.
And for no reason, which is nihilistic.
I think that might explain a lot of the riots that we've seen over the last decade.
Yeah. This explosive emotional need to express yourself violently.
Which is strange, because when I see that happening, like the BLM riots, for example, or the Antifa riots, or any of those things, what I see are people who don't fit in or feel like they don't fit in, and they go and do these acts of violence, and they're creating a community.
Yes.
Like the people that camped out in Seattle and took over that square. It's this, like you said, tear it all down, but we're building a new community because we don't fit in, but we're going to create a community where we do fit in, And
I think people can bond through nihilism, because they can all say, all the people that don't like math can say, we're all a team because math is pointless.
Tell me where that group is so I can join.
But I think, and that's sort of a simplistic example, but I think a lot of these violent groups do the same thing. They individually feel frustrated and they want to thrash out and be violent, and they come together.
Yeah.
And they form this community of people who like violence.
I remember in high school, so this is going back to the early 80s, there was this sort of second wave of punk rock that came out in the early 80s, and I think I was a junior, and this new wave of freshmen came in, and they all had the colored hair and the Doc Marten boots and all that, and they always loved to talk about nonconformity. But it's like they all dress the same. It's like, it's the new conformity. Yeah. It's not nonconformity. It's just the new conformity.
Yes.
So nihilism, for me, outside looking in, it's just a different group.
Yeah, I agree. I think all people seek social connections. It doesn't matter how off the wall you are. Everybody wants it. We are social animals, and we can't help it. Even the people that think of themselves as individuals, and I'm different, they still are seeking connections with people like them, and they frequently don't realize it.
Which I think belies the whole thing about life not having any meaning, because why come together in a collective if you don't believe there's any meaning?
So deep down, you are seeking meaning, even though you disclaim it.
Yeah. Wow, that was heady.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's sort of an important topic to think about, because this philosophy or belief or outlook leads in some very dark directions. Mm-hmm. And it does have some innate temptations for us to follow it sometimes in certain areas. And so we always have to be careful about being suckered into that and saying, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. We need to say, oh, no, things matter. some things don't matter as much as others. A lot of things don't matter as much as certain things. But things do matter, and we need to recognize that. That's what makes us human.
Right.
And we can't let that go.
Right. Good thoughts. All right. Well, I think we've wrapped up another show. A very meaningful show.
Yes.
A non-nihilistic show.
That's very much non-nihilistic. I think they're all non-nihilistic. I would like to think so anyway.
I think our shows are purposeful.
I think so. Thank you for listening to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. And we'll join you next week. If you missed any of this, you can always go to BernieRadio.com and listen to the podcast or any of our past ones. And we will see you next week.